Hi, everybody. So this is the weekly overview, our week 3 video. So the first thing I want to do is apologize because, like a total ninny, I for some reason included the journal or presentation due date in last week's announcement, but it's actually due on Wednesday, so in a couple days. So the Unit 1 journal or presentation is just a reflection on Unit 1 now that we are closing it out, basically. So I mentioned down here that if you want to check out the weekly overview from last week and the week 2 announcement, there's some pointers there. If you already submitted it, congratulations. You don't have to worry about it. So that's due on Wednesday the 8th. And then on Sunday the 12th, you have a Unit 2 progress checkpoint. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit more about today. So the Unit 2A progress checkpoint is a chance to reflect a little bit deeper on the Craap test. So this is not something that you need to complete before doing your work in 101. In 101, you will turn in the final draft of your personal essay assignment. You'll read and annotate the next reading, called Is School Too Shallow? And you'll complete and submit the Unit 2 Reading 2 Comprehension check. You do not need to complete your O11 assignment for the Unit 2A progress checkpoint before doing your Reading 2 Comprehension check. You don't need to do this step before this step. This is just going to help a little bit as we start talking about reading comprehension, and also as we move into, more so than that, when we start moving into research. So in 101, and I'm actually going to show you our 101 class, in the 101 announcement, there's a couple things that I've asked you to read. So everybody's going to be reading about information literacy and about finding quality texts and about using EBSCOhost. EBSCOhost is the system that we use, the database that we use in order to find resources. So what we're doing over here in O11 is really talking about a little bit more in depth about what it means to evaluate a source, because that's what we're going to be doing in 101 next week. Next week, you will actually find a source by Wednesday of next week. You will find a source on EBSCOhost that you can use as your reading 3 article. You're going to find an article on your own. As we are doing this work, I want to talk a little bit about what goes into finding a good source. And so one of the things that goes into that is the Craap test. So if you click on this Unit 2A progress checkpoint, what I want you to do is read the article Evaluating Sources. Craap. Then I want you to reflect on what you learned about relevancy and purpose by answering these questions in just a Microsoft Word document in complete sentences. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look over this article, which explains what the Craap test is. Craap stands for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. These are the things you consider when you're trying to determine if a source is good or not. And this is one of the hardest skills to learn because you have to really be a critical thinker, like we talked about in the Lumen article, who knows when to ask pertinent questions, who knows when to dig in, because all of these questions are ways that can help you understand if the article you're looking at is current, if it's relevant, if it's authoritative, if it's accurate, and if it has a good purpose. And even when you answer all of these questions, you still need to have your critical thinking antennae like kicked up to like a high degree to make sure that you're looking at sources that are good. And I will say that this is something that's kind of important right now in particular, because in the past couple years I've noticed on the site EBSCOhost, which we're going to use to find our article, there have been more and more inclusions of articles from popular magazines and articles that might be written for a particular audience, articles that are written by students. When you're doing serious research, opinion papers written by other students are not necessarily helpful in terms of creating strong research. Sources that are primarily written for teenagers, like things in Teen Vogue or Teen People, um, articles or scholastic articles that might be written for teenagers. Those are not particularly strong resources, but it's very hard to be able to tell that. In the past, students just kind of were like, oh, if it's on a database, it's fine. That's not necessarily the case. So, what I want y'all to really be thinking about is how to develop your critical thinking skills so that you're really digging into questions like, who actually wrote this? Should I really trust this person? Do they have the authority? And not just because they're on a .com, but when I look them up, are they actually an expert, or are they perhaps a college student like me who's just offering an opinion on their school newspaper? Because if you're using that as a serious source, it's not a very strong one. So, what the Craap test helps you do is really dig in to evaluate your sources. And this is kind of a time where, like, if you need to Google stuff, this is where Google comes in to help you out. You can Google authors, you can Google publications to figure out whether or not things are strong sources to be relying on. And the more complicated the world gets, and the more information that's immediately available to us, the more important this is. This is particularly important when we're talking about things like relevance. If you are writing about a topic and all of your sources are from 10 years ago, everything in our society is moving so quickly right now that if your sources are maybe even 4 or 5 years old, they may not be relevant anymore. So this Craap test, the CRAAP test that you do, um, is a sort of measure of asking lots of different questions to find out whether or not you've got a source that's good. So, in doing that, I want y'all to reflect on a couple questions that I've included here, like how can you determine relevancy? What makes a source important? What makes it relevant? What is an intended audience? What does that mean? What are some ways that you can identify an intended audience? What are the various purposes a text can fulfill? What are some ways that you can identify an author's purpose? So I want you to look over that article and reflect on these. And this isn't just like a fill in the blank situation. You're gonna have to kind of like look at those questions and maybe do some Googling on your own and some thinking and reflecting on your own about how you can think about these, you can answer these questions. So if I were you, I would do, and because I mentioned here, please answer in complete sentences. I'd open up my Microsoft Word document, which I'm doing right now, and I would paste these questions in. I would probably do them, as a numbered list. And you know me, I'm a Times New Roman girl. And then you can answer them. How can you determine relevancy? And I want you to answer them. In complete sentences like this. If you want, you can format it however you like. You could put this in bold and then however you want to do that. I just want you to answer complete sentences, these questions, and then save this and submit that document. So it's really just a chance to give you some time to explore these ideas a little bit more. Because a lot of times we look at something like this and the tendency is to reduce it to be like, oh yeah, it was written 3 years ago. It's about the same topic. I've heard of this person before. Seems pretty accurate, and I think it's informational. But in order to really pay attention to a source, you might need to ask more of these questions and dig deeper with these questions. And that's what we're kind of thinking about doing with this assignment. Really reflecting and thinking deeply about how can you find a good source? What are some things to pay attention to? So that's what I want you to do this week.